Welcome back to the Fast Life Podcast, which is brought to you by Simpson Motorcycle Helmets. I just rode over 10,000 miles in the new Simpson Carbon Outlaw Bandit, and it's one of my favorite helmets. It's hands down the lightest helmet I've ever worn, and the secure detents keep my visor where I want it at all speeds. You can't go wrong with any of the models from Simpson. Check them out at simpsonmotorcyclehelmets.com and give them a follow on the gram at Simpson Motorcycle Helmets. Many brands and individuals in the motorcycle industry referred me to Manny. Most of our listeners know I've struggled to get on the right path in this tax game. In this episode, Manny lays out a lot of what businesses like mine, full-on production shops, and YouTubers and influencers alike should know and do regarding the behind-the-scenes side of business and taxes. Manny's a biker, and that is where I prefer to keep my money in the motorcycle community. Here we go.
Hey guys, you ready to let the dogs out?
Fast Life Podcast.
All right, man. Well, hey, first off, thank you for all the help you've been doing for me with this tax stuff. It's scary. It's like so, you know, everybody's always like, you live the dream because you're self-employed and blah. I was like, you don't know how simple it is when you have a job and they pay all your taxes. You get a fucking tax return. Yeah. You know, you don't really ever see the money. Yeah. Therefore, it's kind of never exists. Being self-employed is fucking stressful.
Yeah, man, you're definitely, and that's the thing, man. You know, you're definitely wearing all the fucking hats. You know.
Exactly.
People, you know, I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine, and you know, we got to talking. He owns a business too, and you know, one of the things that probably irritates me the most is when people say that kind of shit, like, "Oh, you're so lucky," or "It must be nice."
Yeah, it must be nice. Yeah.
The "must be nice" is, you know, those really hurt, man, because it's like, nah, man, it's not nice. You know, it's a tough gig. You know, you're the customer service, you're the accountant, you're the billing department. You know, you're really doing everything. So it's really tough, and you know, you know just as much as I do. It's not easy.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, you know, if you think about it, like whatever it is that you do, let's just keep it in the motorcycle world. Whether you're customizing bikes, building them, painting them, you know, maintaining them, like you have this thing that you're trying to laser focus, be good at, right? You want to be able to do the best job you can, create the shit, but the taxes, the accounting, all the money stuff on the other side is it's its own career in business, right? And a lot of brands, people, old OGs in this game, usually their wives do all the accounting and bookkeeping, and then they might have a CPA or something to kind of do the final gloss over and get it right. Yeah. But most days, like most modern times, like our wives they got their own jobs. Like we don't make enough money in these brands to have, like, you know, bring the kids in and have them fucking sweep the floors and get a paycheck, you know?
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, and just that's kind of one thing that I try to do with a lot of my clients, and I work with a lot of people in the industry, in the motorcycle industry, and it's just, you know, one of the things that kind of wanted me to develop this niche market and progress towards the motorcycle industry, just growing up and here in Southern California, we were heavy on the racing scene with the imports and stuff like that when I was a kid back in the mid '90s, and you know, you'd go to a shop and hang out, and you know, in your mind you always thought like, wow, it's pretty successful, like it's cool, this guy has a shop and people come in and get their cars hopped up and get lowered, and you know, suspension and you know, racing clutches, short shifter, whatever, right? Yeah. And you know, a month later, you know, oh, I'm gonna go down to, you know, RS2 or whatever, and just an example, and get this done. You pull up, and then the shop's closed. Yeah, yeah. And it was like, yo, what happened? Oh man, you got into some tax trouble and had to close down shop or whatever, right? And then, you know, for me, it was more like, man, I'd like to get into this industry and help out with what I can and bring my expertise to the table, and hopefully it's enough to get these guys moving in the right direction for the long run, right? And see what evolves from it, versus like, oh, they got into this trouble or that trouble or whatever, and they had to close up, versus, well, they were able to get some help and alleviate some of that responsibility or that task so that they can progress as a business and see what the future holds for the industry, you know? And that's kind of like that's always been kind of like my whole, like just kind of like what I always wanted to see happen, you know?
Yeah, well, it's good to, like that's been the scariest part about me finding a CPA, because someone knows someone, or there's this door with a sign above it in the shopping center, and it's like, you never know what they know or what they can do, but they rarely know anything about your industry. Right. And that's kind of the thing that, like, I would imagine that high-end, huge businesses have tax people that are not just good at taxes, but understand their market of where they work in, like what's the industry about. Right. We understand that industry. We can help you find the loopholes and get through this process, right? And so that's kind of like why, like we talked to, Eric's been trying to link us up for a couple of years, but I'll be honest with you. I think I told you on the phone, this shit is just stressful to me. Yeah. On top of a stressful job. You know what I mean?
Shit, it's stressful to me, and I do taxes, bro. Shit, Eric's my boy. I love Eric to death, man. And he's always like, every time we go somewhere, he's like, oh, this is, the tax man. He works with everyone in the industry, and there's times where I'm just like, Eric, chill, bro. I'm trying to just relax and have a good time with this show.
Yeah, it's kind of like hey man, you're a painter?
Yeah.
Come see my fender real quick, and it's like. You don't want to have to get into a deep conversation about what you do in every little aspect of what you also enjoy. Yeah.
And it's cool. I know he means well. But, that's my boy, man. Eric is my crime partner. But, dude, just to get back to, like the industry. And so, like, with me, it's a little different because I can walk into a shop and, if it's someone that wants me to help them with tax stuff and they're in the motorcycle industry and I walk into a shop, the difference between me and like your local tax office where, it's like a mom and pop shop and they got like 4 families waiting to get their taxes done. Yeah. It's like, I ride to the shop and I take a look around and I'm like, all right, cool. I'll look at their, previous year tax return and just, 10 minutes of looking at the tax return and 10 minutes of looking around the shop, I could just see like everything that's not on that tax return, right? Like, there's a $50,000 bill right there just sitting that was done for a show. And a lot of these dudes that own shops, they don't fucking ride those bikes. You know what I mean? Like, it's just sitting there and it was made for a show or for whatever, born free or whatever, right? I mean, and a lot of like mom and pop shops are afraid to take those types of deductions because they're like, oh no, like, do you ride the motorcycle? Well, yeah, I kind of ride. And they're like, no, I can't take that. Like they're like a freak out moment. But I know it's a business expense. At the end of the day, they're not really building these bikes to keep them. They're building them for shows, and they're dropping some buku bucks on these bikes, on these builds, I mean, shit, just walking around born free a couple weekends ago, it was like, I mean, if I had to put a number on it, because that's just how my brain operates. Yeah. Just within the matter of one section, I feel like I was looking at like almost $300K worth of builds.
If not more, 100%.
You know what I mean? And that's just maybe like, just eyeballing like 10, 15 bikes,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously being in the industry, you find the loopholes of building as far, whether it's a lot of bartering or dealer costs, things like that. It kind of helps the whole deal out. But in the grand scheme of it, it's expensive to customize motorcycles, and sometimes the most expensive bikes don't even look like it. Yeah. There's people that have $20,000 in their motor. Yeah. There's dudes that have $15,000 in carbon fiber and then they paint over it. You know what I mean? That you don't even know it's there anymore,
Save the whopping 60 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. So there's just a lot of aspects to, that whole concept that's crazy. For me, it's like let's just say the automotive industry, right? Because that's kind of where I came from. It's always been one of those places that you're 1099'd. Oh yeah. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So you're always kind of almost air quotes self-employed to some degree where you're basically having to, fucking like take this, you get $1,000 check. And when you're young, especially, hell, now I'm like, okay, well, all this $1,000 is going to rent. Yeah. But technically I need to pull 25% of this out and put it to the side. And that's hard to do as like a a business, especially going through the ups and downs of how the industry flows.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
800 of that's really what's yours.
Exactly. You know?
Yeah, dude. It's crazy that you talk about that because it's so true. It's not like a regular gig where you go, you work your 8 hours, 9 hours, and you made $600 that day, and minus your health insurance, minus your taxes, minus your state taxes here in California, which is crazy these days. Minus your dental insurance. So at the end of the day, you went to work, made $500, but you're really taking home, $280.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, right? And a lot of people don't understand that is technically supposed to apply to your self-employment as well.
Mm-hmm.
When you're getting like a 1099, you're a contractor and whatnot. So this, within theory, right? Like it's relevant, but it's definitely hard to set that aside and just let it sit there and wait.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's where you got to have someone to a tax guy that really has to educate you and say, hey, if you don't want the money just sitting there because you think you're going to spend it, send it up to the IRS, make that payment.
Yeah.
But that's the hardest part.
Yeah, I mean, my wife just got put onto she's a barber, and she's been pretty much working like a commission based where she gets a percentage of the commission, but she's got a paycheck, right? So essentially your taxes are taken out or all the stuff, right? Well, the barber shop that she's at decided to just put everybody on booth rent, meaning that she had to start essentially her own business.
Yeah.
But she's quickly finding that, like, because she doesn't, she rents a booth space, but because of the things that he provides, he gets, the actual barbershop provides, he gets to have more write-offs.
Yeah.
For, whether it's the towels, the tools, the chairs, the electricity, all these things that, like, it's not that you want to pay these, but it's almost like if you had those write-offs, it's either going towards this thing you own or it's just going to the government.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And all she has is just her booth rental expense at that point.
Yeah, and then, how many times is she going to buy a new pair of scissors,
get her shears sharpened.
Yeah, all that stuff.
I work with a few barbers. There's really not much there to expense. You sharpen shears. You probably go through a couple machines for your fades or whatnot, and maybe miscellaneous supplies, right? Like barbicide or whatever stuff they use to disinfect, and maybe a couple aprons or whatever, and that's pretty much it. Aside from maybe some mileage and some fuel expense or whatever, and there's not much there. So you really have to plan ahead for your taxes. That's probably one of the hardest part for owning a business is the tax planning aspect of it. You really got to have that responsibility of sending that money up to Uncle Sam ahead of time, so that when you go to file your taxes at the end of the year, you got a little nest egg sitting there. So if you sent up 10 grand and your tax bill is 11, well, you're only coming out of pocket $1,000 because you already prepaid your taxes. Yeah. And there's a lot of penalties and charges that the IRS charges for not doing it the right way. So there, it's just a matter of having that business mindset of you got to do what you got to do. Yeah. Especially if this, if a business is putting food on the table, the last thing you want to do is, risk, that style of life. Because when you're self-employed, there's a lot of freedoms that come with it. Making your own schedule, waking up whenever you want to fucking go to work, or, today I'm not going to work. I'm going to fuck off and watch Netflix all day, or I'm going to take off and just go ride the coast and have breakfast, lunch, and dinner on the bike.
Those days exist, but I always tell people you're just borrowing time. Yeah. There's also like, there'll be a 5-week every day of the week, sometimes 10 hours a day, 12, whatever, to get to the point where you can be like, it's kind of like you said with the, like, paying up the money, that way you only owe that much at the end. Same thing. Yeah. You work a lot more here to have a little more free time then. Yeah. I've been busting ass to be able to come out and do this trip, Yeah. When we first talked on the phone, I was up in Oklahoma painting bikes, and that's kind of a, you're grinding in there doing that stuff, right? And so, like, this whole process of it is difficult. And I think now, so in my position. I've spent, in the motorcycle industry for 20 years, but I've spent so much of it trying to establish myself and figure out how to just make enough money to live, air quotes, comfortable,
Yeah.
That the whole time it's like, well, shit, like I'm finally making some money, but I'm not paying enough in to be able to go buy a house or do something like that. And you just get to this point, like I'm going on 42 years old. Like I'm like, oh,
You gotta start making power moves.
I want, yeah. I mean, you want to be able to like just have some security. You know what I'm saying? Having a brand like Arlen support the Fast Life podcast is absolutely surreal. Decades before I fell in love with motorcycles, the Nest brand was right there innovating and inspiring generation after generation. The brand's long-standing history and dedication to the custom motorcycle industry is truly remarkable. I have been fortunate enough to use many of their products on my Road Glide, Lowrider ST, and FXR chopper over these past few years. I love their 4 and 6 piston brake calipers, wheels, and bagger mid controls, and I use Arlen air cleaners on all my bikes. And even after thousands of miles, the parts still look and feel new. If you're interested in learning more about the Arlen motorcycle products, head on over to arlens.com where you can find out more information and see their vast catalog. And for our listeners, if you drop the Fast Life 10 offer code at checkout, you're going to save yourself 10% on your order. And don't forget to give these guys a follow on Instagram at Arlen Motorcycles to stay up to date with all the happenings around the brand. Now let's get back to the show. If you're looking for high quality motorcycle lighting, then check out Custom Dynamics. It doesn't matter if your motorcycle has been around the block or it's fresh off the showroom floor. They offer a wide range of LED lighting options for various models as well as custom applications. They have been in business for over 25 years and are committed to providing top-notch products at competitive prices. On my FXR chopper, I'm running one of their custom application LED taillight strips and their industry standard 5.75 LED headlight. And on my Lowrider ST, I have been running their Pro Beam Series LED turn signals, taillight, and headlight. You can check out their website at customdynamics.com to explore the available LED lighting options for your motorcycle. And don't forget to follow them on Instagram at Custom Dynamics. It's one of those things I kind of like. It's a blessing and a curse, man. Like it's a blessing if you can fight, because you really only do this once.
Yeah.
Once you figure it out, it's a well-oiled machine after that. But I think the tax thing, for myself included, and for a lot of other people, it's the biggest and the scariest hurdle, because it's not a cut and dry system that you need a guy like you. You need sometimes a bookkeeper as well to go into this mess. It's like, it's not something that usually people can handle themselves.
Yeah, there's definitely different avenues when it comes to taxes, especially if you're selling like merch or you're selling, clothing and parts, because you got your federal tax, which is IRS. You got your state tax if you live in a state that charges state tax. And then you got sales tax, and that's more of what they call local tax. And an example of that's like, say you make a shirt, and you bought the blank for, $5. It cost you maybe $1.80 to screen print it, and you're selling it for $30. So when you sell it to that person, then, there's the sales tax that's defined by whatever state and city you're in these days too, because city and state or city and local taxes or whatever. So you got your state tax. Here in California, you're looking at like 7.5 plus, if you're, the city I live in charges an extra 3 and shit. I don't even buy groceries in my city, bro, because
it's high.
Yeah, it's almost close to 11% these days.
Damn.
I drive a block over to the next city over, and I'm saving myself 3% on everything I purchase.
Damn.
Yeah, so you got those local taxes get you too. That's why another reason why California gas is so expensive, because of local tax.
Yeah. Doesn't the extra $1 essentially that's on that go towards like roads?
Average, on average is about $1, and I did the math a few months back. I did the math on the gasoline markup for tax, and it was probably roughly about $1.65, something like that, extra. So if we didn't have that, gas would be what, like $3.50 right now, $3.40 maybe.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's weird because I feel like, I was telling you my wife's family's from here, and her dad was making good points about how, because isn't there a tax like on the electric vehicles that they pay?
Well, they're gonna try to implement a mileage tax on electric vehicles because since they don't use gas, they're not paying into the gas tax, which is
Going to
air
fix the
quote
roads.
used for roads. Because I mean, the roads are okay, but there's some parts of the roads are just shit, But California's a little crazy when it comes to taxes, but year-round riding.
Yeah, there you go. Well, there's also a lot of opportunity here, and that's kind of what seems to be the driving force of this place.
For sure.
It keeps it kind of available.
Yeah, there's definitely always something going on. There's always some event, some bike night. So I mean, and if you really wanted to start a clothing line and be out there to try to push, your designs and your shirts and set up a booth. I mean, not saying that other states aren't as busy as we are in the motorcycle scene, but there's definitely always somewhere where you can go put your booth up and sell a couple shirts and put your brand out there, see what sells and see what's not selling,
I was at Orange County Harley from 11 to 3, and then Bassani's having an event from 4 to 8.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I think there's something else going on. It's some other Harley dealer nearby.
Oh yeah, Laidlaw's is at a grand reopening.
Yeah, the grand opening. Some breakfast brunch thing, whatever it was. But that's a prime example of like it's really busy out here. And I've done some writing and talked to dudes from I got clients outside of California, the Carolinas and Arizona, Texas. Indiana, Tennessee, so Florida, East, a lot of East Coast clients. So, you get to talking with these guys and you have some pretty interesting conversations sometimes because this was a few years back, but we were having a conversation and I was telling a client of mine, and I'm like, yeah, man, I'm trying to get this cam done on my bike, so I think I'm going to head over to the shop in about a week or so, whenever they can squeeze me in. He's like, well, why don't you just do it yourself? And I'm like, I've never really put a cam in any of my bikes. I just kind of just go to the shop and get it done. He's like, what? And then it was kind of like that. Wait, what? Like that Spider-Man moment where you're kind of like pointing at each other, like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? But once we started kind of like talking about it a little bit more, we're like, well, in other states you have 2-3 months of downtime where you can't ride because of weather.
Yeah.
So people have the time to learn to work on their bikes and do this, do that, figure something out. If if they didn't do something right, they could break that motor down because they still got another month left before it's riding season.
Yeah.
Now here in California, there's no downtime, bro. You're riding every weekend. There's a ride. You're riding down to Julian. You're riding up to Ventura or Santa Barbara, up the coast or PCH or. So people don't want to have that downtime. They don't want to have their bike down,
Yeah, for sure.
Even local shops, man. You talk to like a lot of my clients that own shops in the area, and they're just like, yeah, man, people expect to have it done like next day, and sometimes parts aren't available. Like during COVID and all that shit, fucking the parts situation was crazy.
Yeah, people had the money, but there was no manufacturing going on. Once the parts that were on the shelves kind of flew off, it was people trying to get materials to make something and this and that, and it was a shit show for a while,
Yeah, aluminum was short.
Yeah.
Shortage in aluminum.
And the prices of everything has gone up, and that's kind of where, things are at with, like, say, the paint industry. And California's always been a struggle with paint because of the regulations they already have out here. But what seems to happen, and I've said this in other podcasts, but the paint industry, material-wise, is regulated by the collision industry, which is regulated by the insurance industry. So, we were just having this conversation with my wife and her aunt and stuff about how insanely high insurance is for perfect records. Like, it's like, okay, well, I have a Jeep that's worth $20,000. Why am I paying so much money for insurance? But it's like this algorithm-based thing that they're doing now.
Yeah.
And now that, like, the paint shops need more money, the materials are costing more, it raises our insurance rates higher. It makes it to where it's hard for us to paint motorcycles because those materials cost so much now. So when you have a bagger, which is kind of obviously the hot thing to have for a lot of people, and they want to paint it, when you have a shop like mine that's a brick and mortar that has utilities, bills, I have to buy materials, I have to I have to pay for all the things that's involved to make that thing, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not at my house. I don't have a garage that I get to do it in where I save on that rent, or I don't have a shop that I work at that they let me use the booth and use some of the materials. Like, you got to buy all that shit.
Yeah.
It just costs money. And so, you know, when you're telling someone like, hey, it's going to be 10 grand to paint this bike, they're thinking like, oh, this dude's putting 10 grand in his pocket. It's like, nah, man, I'm putting like, if I'm lucky, not even talking about taxes.
Yeah.
But let's just say the taxes. You give me 10 grand real quick, you know, 25% of that, just a rough number. I'm at $7,500 now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Plus your time.
I haven't even bought materials to paint this motherfucker yet.
Yeah.
That material cost doesn't give a fuck about the taxes, you know, which that becomes a write-off. That's a whole different thing. But let's just say it for hypotheticals. It's like now the materials, depending on what kind of color they want, it might be, you know, it's going to be a whole gallon of clear because you're going to have to clear it a couple times. You'll have a little bit left over, but not enough to paint another bike. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of individual to that. So you're 3, 4, 5 grand in materials, 2 weeks worth of work.
Yeah.
Now I'm like sitting here with $2,500 in my pocket, and I still got to pay the shop rent, the bills, and like it ain't worth it.
Yeah, it's crazy because a lot of people don't understand like the back end to a business, you know, the back end process to just even getting the work done. Because you know, I have clients who own paint shops, so I understand a little bit, but I do know that, you know, based on the type of color and paint that they're looking for, like sometimes that changes the prep work.
Yeah.
You know, you don't prep all bikes the same. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, you know, so
Like if somebody wants to flake out, they want a flaked out paint job.
Yeah.
That's the first layer. That means that you essentially do an entire paint job. You sand it, prep it, get it all dialed, spray it silver, shoot silver flake, then you clear coat it, 3, 4 coats, whatever. Then you got to let it dry for a couple of days. Then you got to sand it all the way back down. Now you're where, if you didn't do a flaked out paint job, now you're back to ground zero.
Yeah.
Right? So now you have to add another paint job, which is going to be color, graphics, whatever the case on top of it. And then you technically need to clear coat that again and bury it and smooth it. And then if you're lucky, you can come back and do your final details, pinstripes, stuff like that. And then you'll do your final clear.
Yeah.
Well, materials are getting shittier. So now you're sometimes having to sand that back down and then do your last coat of clear to where it's like smooth and glassed out.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
those 3-stage, 4-stage days are long and gone, huh?
It's just getting to the point where it's a lot. So, you know, it's just work, you know, and then, you know, I mean, I'm super fortunate because of coming up in the era of custom paint where you had to kind of learn how to use a lot of the tools that a lot of people don't know how to use today. Like some people need to go find a vinyl shop to make logos to be able to use the stencils. Well, I learned how to make that myself. So I have my own thing. Well, back in the day, friends weren't painters. We were all like cutthroat back then. So you had to learn how to be your own airbrush artist or your own pinstriper because it was rare that somebody would help you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So back in the day, it forced me to learn how to do all the aspects of paint. Not that I'm the best or good at all of it,
Yeah.
but I know how to do it all, right? Nowadays, you know, you have, like I said, I envy this. I'm saying this because I envy it. I envy somebody who gets to custom paint on the side because that's
Yeah.
the fucking hustle.
Yeah.
Like if you have a job that's doing everything we're talking about, paying all the bills, taxes, life's good, you have a set amount of hours, you know for a fact at Friday at 4 p.m. you're leaving and you don't have to think about this place until Monday morning at 7. You have a whole weekend to either A, spend with your family, go work on that project in the garage, that helmet, that paint job that's going to pay you an extra couple $1,000s.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Stress free.
Stress free.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to cost you money, but like, oh shit, over 2 weekends I made an extra fucking $3,000.
Yeah. The
You know what I'm
difference
saying?
between like work done out of passion and work done out of necessity.
Yeah, yeah.
There's
And
a,
so-
there's a little difference. Not saying like quality wise, but
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, in a sense of like where the headspace is too. you know?
Exactly. Like, and the hard part about like I do have a necessity to have to paint, so I have to find a way to handle all these problems. That's kind of why I've put the taxes off so much because it's overwhelming, and it can overwhelm my mind while I'm trying to focus on this project.
Yeah.
So you know, oh, no, I'll deal with that later. I'll deal with it later, and then later it becomes the next project that you keep next one, and you know what I mean. Then you go down the line. And it just turns into a shit show that we're now trying to unravel.
Yeah, it's similar to what I do. I mean, there's, you know, as far as like to get stuff done, I have a bookkeeper that I use, which, you know, he's really good. that's my boy. He takes care of me with my bookkeeping. But you know, my main gig is taxes. That's what I do. You know what I mean? That's what I'm good at, and that's where I try to focus my energies because, you know, if I had to sit there and do bookkeeping and do the taxes and then do, you know, like the final step of the bookkeeping, because my bookkeeper, he gets to me, it's pretty raw, you know, it's spot on, but I still got to go in there and move stuff around. And you know, the hardest part about that end of the job is where, you know, you call your client, you're like, hey, I'm just kind of going through your bookkeeping. I see that you took out about $5,000. Like, what'd you end up using that for? And like, I don't know. And it's like, all right, man, I get it, right? Like, there's a lot going on within your business, but at the end of the day, it's like work with me here, bro. Give me something, right? Like, dig deep.
Exactly.
But you know, it's just part of the business that I'm in, and you know, it's just little battles you got to deal with.
Yeah.
To try to like get this done right, and I'm like, freaking super ADD, and shit has to be fucking perfect.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really what the only reason I'm as good at my job as I am is because of that mindset. You know, but I've learned to kind of not be so hard on myself about that, because shit, man, that stress is killer.
It is, yeah. Well, you know, you were telling me earlier that you kind of went to college and stuff for like graphic design and things like that. Like, how do you find yourself into this position doing taxes and whatnot?
Well, I grew up working with my old man. He had a shop. We're air compressor mechanics by trade.
Yeah.
We worked on big, like, portable units they use to break concrete on construction sites, and stationary units, like 50, 60, 100 horsepower units. These are huge monsters, you know?
Yeah.
And we just grew up working in my old man's shop, and, you know, my old man was hardcore, you know? Like, slaps to the back of the head if you weren't doing shit right.
Yeah.
Like, figure it out in your head. Why do I got to tell you to do everything? Type thing. You're like fucking 11 years old. Like, I just want to go play fucking Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. And then you know, I you know, about 17, 18, I knew that I didn't want to be a mechanic. Just growing up and doing it my whole life, I was just kind of like, you know, you're kind of like, I don't know if that's what I want to do, right? So I started going to school for graphic design, learning like printing, and you know, by the time I was 18, I was doing little flyers for like, you know, house parties and ditching parties or whatever, like putting flyers together, printing them at school, charging people for the design and stuff. And then when I got out of high school, I kind of, you know, I went and did about a year and a half's worth over at like a local college, just, you know, learning like Photoshop and all that Illustrator stuff, and starting to get a little better, and I started making money. It was crazy because, you know, that was when computers were really big, and I learned on a Mac. And when I decided I didn't want to go to college anymore, I was just going to, you know, start designing and making money and go into business for myself. I couldn't afford a Mac.
Yeah, yeah.
This is like 1998, 99. No fucking Macs were like, I think the cheapest Mac was like $4 or $5 grand back then, because that's what they were mainly used for because of the processing power they had. You know, so I ended up designing on a PC, and then it's a different language a little bit, so there was definitely a learning curve. And then I don't know, I just, after a while, I kind of got like bored of doing that. It's not, and then my dad was like, I was still working with my dad, you know, on the weekends and stuff, and I kind of just got tired of working with my old man, and my brother got me into banking, and that's kind of what I started doing since, well, I got into selling cars and learning the trade of sales and finance and all that stuff, and I got tired of the hours because, shit, you know, when you sell cars, you're there all the damn time.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
that's how it is for the people that sell motorcycles too, at like dealerships. Like you always got like deals pending and going, and it's kind of juggling like 5 or 6 things at once, and you're kind of at the mercy of when they're gonna show up and when this is gonna happen. You know what I mean? Yeah,
because you got your Christmas sales, you got your Easter blowouts, you got your summer sales, you got your Halloween specials, right? So, you know, that's when people go buy cars, and when they got the time off, and usually when they got the time off is during the holidays, or, you know, they want to buy their wife a Lexus for Christmas, or they want to buy the family a car for Christmas or whatever. So you're always there. They call it working bell to bell. Like, are you working bell to bell today? Yep. You know, open and close.
Yep.
Shoot, man, it was cool though. I learned a lot. Me and my cousin ran a Corvette department up at Saab Chevrolet for a little bit, and that was pretty cool, just selling Corvettes to rich people.
Yeah.
It was crazy, man, how much these fucking millionaire dudes know and the type of contacts they have. And you get guys that would call you and be like, hey, did that Z06, get to the dealer already? And you're like, wait, what? You go in there, look in the system, like, oh yeah, we do got a Z06 coming in today. How the fuck did you know?
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh no, well, I know it's gonna be there like somewhere around 2 or 3 o'clock. I just want you to know that I want it, and if you can get me your routing number and account number so I can go ahead and wire you over that money.
Damn.
Yeah, shit was crazy, bro. It's like mind blowing. That was my first experience dealing with people with some serious freaking money, The trip to see that kind of stuff. But
so what's banking entail? You know what I mean?
Man, I worked in I worked in banks for a really long time. I worked at Chase, B of A. I've held a lot of positions in banking. I was a mortgage rep at one point, business banker, a personal banker. I was a licensed investment rep at one point. So, helping people with, refinancing the mortgage on their house or setting them up with, basic checking accounts and savings accounts, retirement accounts, helping, with investments. People want to open up a Roth IRA or individual retirement account. So I did all that working in the banking industry. I did that for years, mainly out of necessity. I was starting to grow a family, and you gotta have health insurance for your kids. You gotta have health insurance for your wife who's gonna be going into labor, and so and you made some decent coin. It was like back then you're making like 60, 70 grand a year plus commission. So if you were good at what you did, you'd easily break 100K. Working 8 to 6 or 8 to 5, and working till 1 o'clock on Saturdays, and still having some sort of life, right? And then that's really where a lot of my knowledge comes from, is like close to 15 years in the banking industry and just being educated by the banking world, going to classes and learning about entities like LLCs, corporations, S-corps, looking at tax returns, because people would bring in tax returns to get approved for a business loan. So we would pre-underwrite, like business loans, meaning like we would take in their taxes and everything else and kind of get a general idea and input all that information and get a general idea of what the tax return looks like, If they're coming to you to try to get a business loan for, 100 grand, and their business shows that, they only made 20,000 the last 3 years. Well, obviously it looks like on paper you can't afford shit, right?
Yeah.
But they're doing taxes that way for a reason, right? Because they want to save on paying taxes.
Yeah.
So it's really a double-edged sword when it comes to doing taxes. You either write off a bunch of shit and it looks like your business doesn't make any money, which puts you in a position where now you can't afford to buy a vehicle for your business. You can't get a loan for your business. You can't, buy equipment for your business because you can't afford it on paper.
Yeah.
Or the other end of the spectrum where, your business is profitable on paper, and then you're paying some significant tax bills, 10, 15, 20 grand in taxes for the year. But now on paper, your business is rich, right? Like not rich, but it's profitable. And, now you can apply for that business loan and get maybe 300-400 grand in liquidity because your business looks like it can afford to pay it back.
Yeah.
If your business made 400 grand and you want to borrow 100 grand from the bank's going to be like, yeah, fuck, all day long. Here you go. 10% interest, So now you got access to a $100,000 line of credit, which, in one way or another, people are going to be like, well, why the fuck would I need 100K if I'm making 400K? That doesn't make any sense,
Yeah.
Like, so you get people that like look at it that way, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, yeah, but do you want to? And this is where that freaking millionaire mentality comes into play. Like really, really well-off, wealthy people, they don't use their own money to make money. They use other people's money to make money. So, if you're using a 100K line of credit to make more money, and now that interest that they're charging you on that 100K is a tax write-off. But at the end of the day, if you look at it from one perspective to another, like it's really a zero interest loan.
Yeah.
Not zero interest, but if you're writing off the interest,
yeah,
then you're not really paying interest on the loan.
yeah, and I think it's important for people. I don't know this, and I'm gonna ask. Maybe I'm making a statement, but I'm kind of really asking. Like if say for instance in my business, if I wanted to take out a loan for $100,000 to like, it's to start it's to bring another source of income in, right? Like, oh well, I'm gonna do $100,000 worth of, I'm gonna get these risers made so I can have a parts line, right? That's using that money to pay for that, and then I'm gonna sell them, and that's gonna pay that loan back, and I'll make money on that sale.
That's the profit.
Yeah, but like I don't know so much if like, oh, I'm gonna start a business, or I'm gonna try to take this business to the next level. I'm gonna take $100,000 and buy some more advertising and shit that's not really actually paying you back or paying for itself, in my sense.
Yeah,
you know?
at one point or another, it will pay you back.
It will,
with time,
But I think it's like, because over the years I've had so many people try to invest in the brand. Let me invest, and it's always like enticing, but it's like, I want you to give me $50,000.
Yeah.
And then, we add a few more things, but now I'm just paying you back, or maybe I gave you a percentage and now you're always making money, and that money didn't really go to making a new part of the business. It just went to helping me get this business off the ground. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I still not have to work all the time.
Yeah, you really got to be careful with that stuff with people trying to come in and invest, because there's only one or two things that's going to happen. They're either going to want some ownership in the business, or they're going to want they're going to want X amount of dollars back monthly, or until it's paid in full, right? And that's how they make their money. I can tell you some horror stories about, that kind of stuff, and I've seen it firsthand happen to, a couple people in the industry. Not trying to drop names, but it's definitely, it's like you're getting married to someone. It's definitely a relationship that's gonna have to either evolve and work for the better, or it's definitely, you have to get stuff in writing, and because it can get ugly, and it can get ugly to the point where you're dealing with people who that's all they do for a living is go invest in businesses. Well, they got their ducks in a row. They know what the fuck they're doing, right? If shit hits the fan and they're not getting their money, they're gonna be the first ones to lawyer up. Yeah. And that's their expense. That's one of their expenses for their type of business is lawyer fees.
Yeah.
So sometimes they're quick to do it just because they're like, shit, I'll take this fool to court and fucking, I'll just take the whole fucking business.
Yeah.
So it's just not trying to like say that all the people that want to invest in your business are bad. It's just, that's just one aspect to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're definitely going to have some people that want to come in and invest because they're just a fan of your business or a fan of what you're putting out, and you know what I mean? But you definitely want to have, if it's going to be a significant amount of money, you're going to want to get an attorney involved and write up a contract and make sure you both agree on the terms, and that's what's holding court basically. Or you can even get the contract to say that you guys are going to mediate, meaning you don't go to court, you just figure it out amongst yourselves between both your attorneys, and that way you guys are saving yourself a bunch of money. To get a resolution in place.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I've had people reach out to me before, and and there's times I really thought about it, because I thought about expanding my brand into other areas that, like I said, I have a known motorcycle brand that is known for one thing or another, right? Maybe it's podcast, maybe it's paint. But we could have leaned into selling parts. We could lean into, working on some local motorcycles that are in the area, like all that type of stuff. So there's opportunities that I could grow in other areas, but I don't have the manpower of my own time to go spend doing all that stuff. So I'd have to hire somebody.
Yeah.
And I'd have to do that. And it just, the hard part about hiring somebody to come in and do mechanics or help with the custom builds is that it's one of those things that a lot of people, they take pride in it when it's theirs, but when it's somebody else's, they don't. And so you have a lot of liability that goes out the door when you're trying to trust this person, the other thing I feel like people don't think about a lot is like, if they're an employee, like, are you providing value to the company? Meaning you make this company money, or do you help this company make money?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of like when we worked at the bank, it'd be 5:59 on a Friday. We closed at 6, and still got like 4 people in the lobby. And it's either, you got two types of employees. You got that one employee that walks up and is like, hey, you know what, we're about to close and we're just not going to be able to get to you guys today. You're going to have to come back tomorrow. People are like, oh, well, shit, I took the day off just to make sure I got here at 4. But the wait, it wasn't my fault. The wait was 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then, or you got the employee who was, me back in those days. And, I was just like, all right, you know what? Go over there and, quarterback the situation.
Yeah.
What do you need to do? Well, I just need to check on my credit card. It's been frozen. Okay, let me put you on the phone with this rep. They might be able to get it done before you're even up next, you know?
Yeah.
What do you need help with? Oh, I just wanted to open a savings account. Okay, I'm going to have you sit down with one of my newer reps who can take care of you. It's going to take like 5 minutes. So you start delegating and shifting shit around. So that's basically what it all boils down to, like who you're going to have working for you,
Yeah, that's kind of like the problem solver aspect.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you got some people that when a problem arises, they need to get a guy like you. I don't know what to do.
Well, let me call my boss and see what he says. And
exactly.
Like, they're not taking charge, But, working with people and at one point helping with like the management and coaching and training of employees and stuff, I really experienced firsthand, working with, some people just, go to work, and some people just go to work to get paid. And
Over the past year, Cowboy Harley-Davidson has been putting in the work to help bring together various aspects of the motorcycle culture within the Austin, Texas community. They have supported not only the podcast, but also many local bike events and shows, including our FXR tour. I want to express my gratitude to the entire staff at Cowboy Harley for their support. I've had the pleasure of purchasing 2 bikes from Cowboy Harley-Davidson in my lifetime. Most recently, I bought a Lowrider ST, which was dialed in with a few custom parts that I pretty much got to have on every bike. Whether you are in the market for a new or used Harley-Davidson or looking to get your motorcycle customized, repaired, or simply maintained, you can count on their professional parts and service departments to get your bike dialed. To get in touch with them, you can visit their website, cowboyharleyaustin.com, or simply drop in and start a conversation about your next or even your first Harley-Davidson. And don't forget to give them a follow on the gram to stay up to date with all the other happenings and events going around in the Austin, Texas area. I have been using Lexin moto products for the past 6 years, and they have been an integral part of my riding experience. My journey with them started with their original FT4 headset and tire pump, but now I've upgraded to their top-of-the-line Novus headset, which features 40mm Lexin Plus speakers, CVC and DSP noise cancellation technology. With the Mesh 3.0 power technology behind it, I can connect with up to 32 riders on any given ride. Their new P5 Advanced Smart Tire Pump is a must-have for every biker. I always keep one in my garage, and it comes in handy during long trips if my phone battery or tire pressure is low. For more information on these fantastic products, check out their website, lexin-moto.com, and don't forget to use the offer code FASTLIFE at checkout to save you 15% on your order. And lastly, head on over to Instagram and give these guys a follow at Lexin Moto. Just check out. Like I said, that I envy that mentality. I don't think I'm wired to do that. Like I've had conversations with some other friends in the industry, and I've been like, if I ever went to work for a brand, I'd be a fucking asset. That's just how I'm wired. Not that I want it to be my brand, but I know how to be of value. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's kind of one of the things I used to tell like people that would come and apprentice or help or whatever is like, I was like, in a paint shop, for instance, like a way I can make this analogy work is like, if you come to work at my shop, but all you really do is sand parts, take out the trash, kind of do things so that I don't have to get off what I'm doing, you're helping me make money. Yeah. Right? Yeah. But if you can come into the shop, sand that bike, paint that bike, get it out, polish it, and deliver it without me ever having to touch it, now you're making this brand money. You're more valuable. Yeah. So and I used to tell my brother this, who used to work for me, I was like, if you did that, and you could do that once or twice a week, I could take these jobs in, I could pay you more because I don't have to touch it. Yeah. I need to make money off of it for the materials, the shop, and all this. But you can make way more money by being the responsible one here. Or you can continue to wet sand and polish and stuff like that forever. And then this is as much as that's ever going to pay.
Yeah, this is as good as far as you go.
Yeah. And so that's what I used, when I got my first jobs in the paint industry, in the motorcycle paint industry, and one of the advices that I took from the guy that kind of brought me into this, he told me when he was young, he first got in the custom paint game. He walked in the shop and go, who makes the most money here? And they pointed at the painter, and that was, I want to be the painter.
Beeline.
I'm busting ass to become that, right? Same thing. It's like I come into a shop, or when I did, I was like, well, I want to be able to do every job in this place.
Yeah.
The airbrush guy, the pinstriper, the buffer, the sander, the body guy.
And people look at you like you're crazy and shit.
Yeah. But it's like
they'll laugh like, oh yeah, look at this guy,
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like, you're the one that's gonna end up making the money,
Exactly, because at the end of the day, I can be of value. I can do the whole job for that shop without anybody else having to touch it.
Yeah.
Or I can be the one on the assembly line doing that one thing.
Yeah. Point A to point Z.
Yep. So, when it comes to like working for a brand, it's like I've thought about getting out of being self-employed. That's kind of been a thought on my mind, but it's hard to like know, okay, how much money am I really living on?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Am I living on $60,000 a year? Could I afford to have the life that I currently have at $60,000 a year?
What's the real number?
Yeah.
That's funny you say that, because when I first left banking and I went and took a gnarly pay cut, I went from making I don't know, like, I want to say it was close to 30 something bucks an hour, factoring in my benefits and everything, because that company, you had free healthcare, which is expensive as fuck.
Yeah.
And that was free healthcare for a family of 4.
Yeah.
Oh, well, 5 at the time. So that's not cheap, especially here in Southern California. So once that job is like, my rate was like, I don't know, $25 an hour. But once you factored in everything that they gave you for free, your healthcare, your dental, your life insurance, like all the little shit,
Yeah.
It was really like close to 30 something bucks, like $38 an hour.
Damn.
And I left that to go work for some, accountant, some tax attorney who was paying me $20 an hour flat. But, risk versus reward. The way I looked at it, I had been in banking so long, and I was like, well, what's the worst case that could happen? I end up back in banking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What made you want to go to the tax route?
Just being self-employed and freedom, and I miss a lot of stuff in my.
I mean, like at that time, going from banking to that job at the tax attorney thing.
I just didn't want. It's either I got in and started my own business, or I went into management with banking, and that's just something I never wanted to do.
Yeah.
You couldn't pay me fucking enough money to babysit adults,
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. Let's all bullshit aside,
Yeah.
I'm a manager. Man, fuck that. You're a babysitter for adults. I don't give a fuck what you say. Motherfuckers calling, well, I can't make it into work today because, my daughter's sick, or I can't make it in. I fell last night. It's just, I gotta leave, because, my mom called me. She's not like, I gotta pick up my mom. And it's just like, fuck, dude. It's always something, And that's what you're dealing with when you're in management and banking level. You got a crew of 25 per branch, and you got to sit there and figure out how to juggle them, and just, I need a raise, or I'm leaving, and it's just always something. And, it's either I make $100K being a manager plus bonuses. If I'm lucky and my team is strong, I'll make another extra 20 grand at the end of the year, or stay as a personal banker or a business banker and make 75, 80 plus bonuses and make the 120, just killing my numbers,
Yeah.
and not have to have the headache of dealing with, managing people, and then, once a week you're at some manager meeting and shit's just rolling downhill, Your regional manager got his ass chewed out because the numbers ain't coming in. Well, guess who's getting chewed out next?
Yeah, exactly.
It's fucking you.
Yeah.
So I just got tired of that shit. I had been tired of it for years, but I did what I had to do to, support for my family, one, and put myself in a position where everybody's got, health benefits and all that kind of stuff, just doing what you got to do. But I always knew I kind of wanted to have my own business, and I saw this opportunity. I'll tell you what the fucking real reason why I left banking. I was at work. It was a Saturday. I was hungover as shit that day. Fucking this old lady comes in, I've helped her once or twice with just like some questions up at the front desk or whatever, right? She comes in, she sits down, and it's July, probably about the middle of July. And she's like, hey, I need to know how much money I made last year because I'm about to, get my taxes done. And I'm like, all right, come over to my desk. And, she spoke Spanish. And I'm like, okay, you made about, 95,000 is what came in. She's like, oh, okay, that's not bad. I'm like, well, that's pretty good. Well, you almost made shit damn near almost what I made, right? I'm fluent, speak Spanish, English, working in the bank, almost 10 years of, experience. And I'm like, what do you do? She's like, I do taxes. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. She's like, yeah, I'm leaving for my country, so I won't be back till December. I'm like, fuck you mean you won't be back till December? Like, it's like, no, yeah, I'm done. I only work from January to May.
Damn.
Tax season. She did personal taxes. So yeah, she's cranking out 95,000 a year, working from January to May, and I'm over here fucking
all year
in a fucking $300 suit, fucking.
Yeah.
And it was kind of eye opening, and she wasn't even a citizen of this country. She had the tax license under her son's name, who had just turned 18. And they pay taxes and everything, but she had worked at a small tax office for years and learned the business, and then opened up her own office. Dude, I could touch both sides of the wall with my arms out at her office. It was a tiny little office, and I was like, well, shit, man, if she can make, and she was, she told me, she goes, you should do it because you'll make a lot of money because you speak English and and you're smart and about like this stuff, so you'll be able to do really good. And she's the one that kind of put me up on game. She's like, come by my office next week and I'll show you. She's like, go here, take this class and get this license. She's like, in about 5 or 6 years you'll be making more than what you're making here.
Yeah.
It was just eye opening, man. It was just like, fuck, I only want to work 6 months out of the year. Shit's crazy, bro. But it all goes back to like, you gotta want it.
Yeah.
You really have to want it. The United States is the land of fucking opportunity if you want to take that opportunity.
Yeah.
It's not going to get handed to you whatsoever. That's just the way it is. There's plenty of money to be made.
Yeah, I definitely agree to that. It's like the cooler thing you do, though, the cooler the job, there's also, you kind of like pay this, not really a real tax, but you're kind of paying a cool tax to be a part of those things.
Yeah.
Like, to be able to work on motorcycles all day, you're not going to be a millionaire.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? To be able to do certain things like this, it's just not a reality. So realistically, a lot of like what we're doing in the motorcycle industry is we're just trying to, for reference to like some drugs, we're just trying to afford our habit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, incorporate the passion of your life into the money making side of your,
and then try to like
life.
balance out staying in love with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's hard.
So, I mean, that's kind of why I envy someone who has a normal job.
Yeah.
Because motorcycles can then be escaped from that world, as opposed to a lot of people in the industry that I speak to, that I'm sure you speak to.
Yeah.
They get overwhelmed with all this responsibility around the motorcycle, that the motorcycle actually somewhat becomes a trigger for those more or less insecure, or not insecurities, but like anxieties. You know what I'm saying?
Shit, you're telling me, man. I was just at a tax conference in Vegas, and I was in class from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. for like a week straight, and the IRS happened to be there recruiting people because, and that's where, this whole thing with the IRS is going to hire, 80,000 agents or whatever. Well, shit, they got about 30,000 people retiring in the next 3 years. And when the IRS talks about agents, they're not talking about field agents where they're out there with the guns and raiding, money laundering and drug operations. That department is real small. So unfortunately, it's like a media hype thing, It's just a lot of it's
well, it
political.
became politicalized.
Yeah, a lot of it's political, but then you get those people that are real real gullible, and they're just like, oh my God, 80 IRS agents are coming after me. It's like, bro, chill the fuck out. You sell shirts on Etsy and shit. Like,
yeah,
the IRS is not coming after you, bro. You know what I mean? You work at a shop, or you work somewhere in a regular job. Like, what are you fucking worried about? Like,
yeah. Well, it's the unknown, I think, that scares
sure.
us, because like for me, having the initial conversations we had alleviated a lot of my fears because now I understand what it is. It's the fear of the unknown that's scary about it.
Yeah.
And I know other painters that I'll probably have to put you on game or put them on game to you. It's like who they also have gone through their shit of not knowing what to do. And, because a lot of like airbrush artists or people in the lowrider industry or scene or whatever, like they'll be badass artists, but they're in the same boat. Either they had a normal job and then they started doing murals and got paid a lot, so where now they're booked out and now they're doing murals a lot, or tattoo artists.
Yeah.
Like I saw you had some known people that you do taxes for and tattoos. It's all the same thing. All these cool jobs, they don't have a fucking 401k, a pension, health insurance.
And they can if they're set up the right way. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the goal. Is like I think I said it earlier. Once you learn how to be proficient at the job, then it kind of gives you a little bit of space in your hard drive to start focusing on how to be better at business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's kind of like where I come in too a little bit. I try to like put my clients up on game and just say, hey, I got a payroll guy. Because I sub out a lot of work, but it's for the main purpose that I let the professionals handle what the fuck they do, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
it's like building a bike.
Yeah, you're not a suspension expert, so
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like you paint the shit out of a bike, but if they say, "Can you do my suspension?" You'll be like, "Well, yeah, I mean, I can." I can throw some bolt-ons on a motherfucker and send it up the road. But if they're looking to get something specific, like race tech dialed in suspension based on your weight and your height,
how you're planning to ride, and all that shit.
Exactly. Yeah, that's different. And that's kind of like how I like to view my business. That's how I kind of approach my business. I got a bookkeeper who I know, that's what he does and he's good at it, and then I got a payroll guy that I trust with my clients and he's good about making sure they have options and understanding what they're doing, why they're doing it, you know what I mean? And the unfortunate part of it is just people don't want to pay, people, oh, it's too expensive. Well, bookkeeping's too expensive, or payroll's too expensive. It's like, bro, you just fucking spent, X amount of dollars on fucking this and that, but nobody wants to pay into what's gonna benefit them the most. You know? They're quick to spend, 10 grand on a motor for their personal bike, but I don't want to pay like a couple $100 a month to make sure their payroll's done correctly through a good payroll company, reputable payroll company and shit like that. That's the unfortunate side to a lot of business owners, and if people just kind of, got that mindset of like, you know what, fuck that, I'm gonna spend the money to make sure my business is running and operating correctly, then that's what's gonna keep you in business even longer, and you know what I mean, having the right people behind you. Yeah, that's really important.
I mean, you look kind of like what you're saying. I want to start a shop. Well, okay, my shop rent is this. Electricity, got to have internet, got to have this. Need to have some kind of insurance to cover whatever happens in that shop, right?
Liability.
And so next thing you know, the next thing you got is, okay, well, now I need people to handle the money. So it's like it starts to add up, but that's why it's a hump.
Yeah.
And you got to figure out how to work that hump, and that's why some businesses don't make sense to do it as a business. I personally think that if you have a nice little shed behind the house and you can do some nice paint jobs, that's probably where you should stay. Trying to get to the point where you're buying a $60,000 paint booth, dealing with city ordinances and all this other bullshit, like bro,
inspections.
going that route is a lot of money, and next thing you know, you're gonna have to take in a lot of work that you don't want to do to kind of keep up with like what's necessary there. But if you can, especially if you own your own home already, dude, just fucking keep it small, keep it easy. But like the whole managing the money situation, that's kind of where
hard.
If you're paycheck to paycheck, it's hard, right? Because like you're scared, but then like if you get to the point where you have a little bit of saved up, whether that's a couple grand or a couple $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, depending on what that is. Once you start saving up money and you kind of have a little bit here, then like you can kind of get into like an operating pattern. And then you got a little thing right here just in case shit hits the fan. But okay, now I can get to the point where I know every quarter I'm paying you so-and-so to knock out this first quarter taxes, but I also know there's a bookkeeping charge, your charge, and whatnot. And I was gonna ask you this, so like as far as, I think I've heard this and I kind of want to ask you just to like maybe help me understand, but also maybe for people. If you're a business and I decide to hire employees, right? And I'm paying them like a W-2, right? They're paying taxes, but I'm also paying taxes on them, correct?
Part of it.
Okay, how does that
Is
work?
part of it. I mean, well, you got it depends on the state too.
Yeah.
But you got your payroll taxes. So the only thing I think, if I'm not mistaken, that you're paying into is a part of the disability.
Okay.
Yeah, but everything else comes out of their paycheck.
Okay.
Yeah, so like
So
your
you're not-
federal taxes, the FICA, which is Social Security tax, and then what else? You got what's the fuck? I'm drawing a blank right now.
Medicaid and stuff like that?
Yeah, Medi-Cal, Medicaid, and all that
Yeah.
shit. Yeah, so you're just paying a small percentage of, if I'm not mistaken, the disability part of it.
Okay.
Because I
That's
know
in
I know
case-
some of that stuff's a write-off on the business tax return.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so and it's a tax write-off. Payroll taxes are a part of it. It's a tax write-off on the business.
And so is that kind of what covers like
Yeah, like if they get hurt or, like you end up having to let them go because work's slow, then they can go apply for like unemployment.
Oh, okay.
And then they have like a nest egg build up. They have a case they can fall back on through unemployment because.
okay. So it's almost like insurance, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And that's the thing that happened during COVID when, when shit hit the fan and everything was closed during COVID and all these self-employed people hadn't filed taxes and they went to file for unemployment. Unemployment was like, well, we don't have a record that you've ever paid into into the system. And they're because you haven't filed taxes. So everyone was scrambling to file taxes.
Oh.
Because when you're self-employed and you file taxes, the self-employment tax, that's basically paying into those into that system. Yeah. So a lot of people were filing, unfortunately, fraudulent tax returns to try to max out unemployment. But people who hadn't filed taxes were scrambling just to file whatever, get it in the system, so they can go ahead and get their claim approved. And then it got to the point where California was just approving claims even if you didn't have anything in the system because they were just trying to be helpful and get people some money so they can survive while shit was all closed or whatever. But that was, that's the thing. There's a lot of fraud in California across the board, bro. Fucking insurance fraud, cars, motorcycles, homes. I got clients who do construction. I got clients with body shops. I got clients with freaking, motorcycle shops, obviously, because I do a lot of motorcycle industry clients. But yeah, man, it's that's one of the other reasons why everything's so damn expensive out here when it comes to insurance. So California's not even issuing. A lot of companies are not issuing home insurance policies right now.
For real?
Yeah,
How does that
they
work?
They stop issuing insurance policies because there's a lot of claims, a lot of fraud. You got construction guys that come to someone's house like, oh, we could fix this and that, but if you say, you got flood damage, maybe we can get some money out of your insurance. And
Yeah.
so it's just,
I mean, to be completely honest with you, that's how a lot of when I first started flying up to NorCal, that's how they were building bikes.
Yeah.
They would get some stated value policy of like $70,000 on this, 2014 Road Glider, whatever, and push it over in the driveway, but it's all custom and it's stated value, so they're getting a paycheck for $50,000.
Yeah, and that's the reason they're not insuring policies either for automobiles in California. If you buy an insurance policy, the last I've heard, because I just tried switching in there, and Allstate down the street was like, oh, sorry, we're not issuing policies anymore. And I'm like, what the fuck you mean? And shit, I'm trying to switch over there. Like, just stay where you're at right now. Shit is crazy. The state had to step in and start issuing policies.
Damn.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Yeah. I mean,
Is it just that there's not enough money coming in to cover
exactly the
what's
claims.
happening? Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
I wonder if that
part of it is the fraud.
Yeah.
I'd say, like, from what I've heard, and I got clients who I do taxes for, and they're insurance agents, and they give me a little bit of a lowdown, but 70% of the reason they're not issuing policies is because of the rampant fraud that's going on with insurance.
shit, people are just, everybody's trying to find an angle to make a little bit of extra cash or whatever, you know?
Pretty much. That's what it all boils down to.
Yeah, it's wild. That's crazy.
It is crazy, bro. You're over here paying fucking, insurance like a fucking sucker and shit, and as I'm down the street doing fraud claim and making $20,000 because they don't want to go work.
Yeah, that's wild, man. And that's what's scary about all this. That's kind of where, it's making it hard to, like, I feel like if you're not already a big established brand business, whatever, like if you're not Built Well or Speed Kings or some of these people that have a lot of things going on, keep it small and simple for a while to see how the economy goes and build up the business side of your business before you keep trying to add more SKUs to the website. Like I said, I think we were kind of leaning into something a while ago, and I wanted to say this, but it's like I wish there was a reset button.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To like, all right, I've been fucking up for 7 years. All right, let me start over. Let me start over real quick.
Yeah, make that call.
Do it all right. You know?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, in a sense, like what I associated this year to be, is, I'm selling everything I got, all my bikes. I want to get as much money as I can to cover this shit and get past it, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at now. That's how me and you get connected. That's how I get down this path. You know what I'm saying?
I try to tell people all the time, like, the best thing you can do when it comes to owning a business or starting a business is don't be afraid to talk to other people about business. Hang around with people who own businesses, and you're gonna learn what they've learned or learn from other people's mistakes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And everyone just sees everybody as competition, or, oh, fuck that fool, he copied my part, or, this guy covered my bracket that I made. And it's just like, I feel like there needs to be a little bit more of communication between business owners, especially in any given industry, and just say, hey man, would you mind if I buy you lunch? And I'd like to chop it up with you about this part that I'm trying to come up with. I know you're making something similar, but I kind of want to get your blessings, and at the same time see if we can kind of like work something out, or you know what I mean? Like, I know that's hard. It's close to impossible, to be honest, but
well, the business side of things, when you get in people's graces, it is kind of a tough one. But I mean, like, me and painters, we talk a lot. How we're, it's kind of price fixing, if you would, but it's kind of like one of those things.
There's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Like,
we just, like, some of us, like Schultz and I and Valley Customs and certain ones of us that are kind of in the same demographic of painter, we kind of paint the same scene. We don't want to be price shopped. We want people to pick us because they like our style. Yeah. So we try to keep our pricing kind of in a similar place so that no one's picking one of us over the other based on who's cheaper. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, in all honesty, amongst most of the major painters, I'm probably the cheapest. You know what I'm saying? And I'm always telling people how fucking expensive I am. Yeah. And but it just keeps the, like I said, it's just, I try to use this podcast platform to kind of, like what we're talking about. I'm trying to, hey, look, this is kind of what it's like painting. This is how much shit costs. Yeah, it's not cheap. It's not cheap, and you hear these nightmares of people like sending their shit to people that don't get done, don't do this. It's because they haven't figured out how to deal with the nightmare, right? They're taking that job in, thinking they can handle it. The next thing you know, they didn't charge enough. Yeah. And now, in a sense, what you get when you go to a guy like me or Schultz or Lucky Strike, we cost more, but we have the professionalism to do what we say we're going to do in the time we say we're going to do it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm pretty reasonable with my pricing, mainly because, one, I have a passion for the people that I work, like the industries that I work with and stuff, Two, it's like I try to stay within the realm of what it would cost them to, go do it themselves. Like when I open up LLCs, corporations and stuff, and people calling me from different states, I can't do the same pricing from one state to another because filing fees are different, you know what I mean? But I try to stay within the realm of, like, if you go to LegalZoom, you're probably gonna spend like $800, but it's a hands-on situation. You gotta go in there, fill out some forms, communicate with someone through email, and make sure stuff is getting back to them so they can file within a timely manner, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When you come to me, it's a hands-off approach. I'm fucking doing everything, I get the data and the information I need from you. I set up the LLCs, corporations, EI numbers, whatever. I do everything, and when I hand it back to you, you're pretty much already compliant. You know what I mean? And you take that to the bank, open up your business bank account, and then we move forward. You know what I mean? So there's a difference between what I do and what you can get done. Because when I tell people what I charge, based on where they're from or whatever, they're like, "Oh, well, I just saw online that I could do it for $500." And I'm like, "Well, go do it." But I don't fix mistakes. Yeah. If you go and you fuck it up and because you wanted to save $300. Cool, but you really got to know what the fuck you're getting into, because
I've had situations where, you know, people go and do that and then come back and want to do the taxes with me, and I'm like, oh, your shit's fucked up.
Yeah.
And now I got to sit there and kind of like, you know, try to fix shit or whatever. And they're like, man, I spent almost the same amount of money getting it fixed.
Do it right first time.
Yeah. Which is cool. I you know, if someone wants to go do it themselves, more power to them, because that just shows that they want to learn, you know. Or,
Yeah.
You know, and that's cool. But it's definitely you really got to know what you're doing. I had one case where a guy set up an LLC in I want to say it was Missouri, and then someone was helping them. It was like an aunt, uncle, friend, whatever the fuck it was. I don't know. So they went, set up the LLC, but when they opened up the EIN number, they did that wrong. So by the end of the year, they come to me. They're like, hey, I want to get the taxes filed. I'm like, cool, send over your paperwork. I need to review it. I want to make a call to the IRS, make sure your shit's set up correctly. And he had opened up an LLC, but his EIN was for a corporation. So.
Didn't work, yeah.
Yeah. And now you got to do some funky ass shit to try to like get it done. So I had to like call the IRS, fill out a form that changes that entity from an EIN number to LLC, and I sent the form in, got rejected, et cetera, et cetera. A month and a half went by, and it got to the point where I spoke to a rep, and she's like, you know what, just do a whole new EIN number, an LLC. And I'm like, are you sure? And she's like, just, what are you gonna do? You know? And then I went in, did it, and luckily it got approved, and they accepted it, and you know, but you know, it's just. And you know, I had to send them a bill, and they weren't happy. But
yeah,
it's just the way it is. What it is.
You know?
Yeah. You know, it's just, you know, you got to be really careful. A lot of people are leaning quite a bit on TikTok and Instagram. You know, oh, I saw a video on TikTok, and you know, and it's just like, yeah, nah, bro.
Yeah.
I was just
like all the advice that those people are trying to make, like those tax advice things. Yeah. It's
all likes and comments they're looking for, you know. Shit's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I was just at this conference, and 3 of the guest speakers were just, you know, they all talked about that whole TikTok shit. You know, it's just fucking people opening up. There's one guy on TikTok, and he's like basically telling people like, yeah, just go here. Here's a link. Get your EIN number. Open an LLC. Go to the bank. Open up a LLC bank account. Apply for a credit card. And then, you know, and then you go online and apply for a credit card here under your LLC. And now you got 30 grand worth of money available to you. And you do a cash advance, and you take all that money, and then you just close out the LLC. So they're basically just going in there and fucking, stealing money or whatever. And then, you know, and then you're good. And then you just do it over.
They put that on. That's weird,
bro. It's crazy, bro. It's the wild, wild west right now.
Well, you know when Biden or whoever it was, I can't remember, did the whole deal where like you had to show any transactions over, like it used to be like 10 grand, right, back in the day.
Oh yeah.
And now it's like
CTRs, and the form is called the currency transaction report, and the SFRs, suspicious financial reporting, or whatever the fuck that is. That's just like whenever you take out cash more than 10 grand, the bank fills out a form. Or if you're ever bringing in more than 10 grand cash, they fill out a form. Yeah, it's just, you know, if you're doing nothing illegal, then there's really not much to worry about. It is what it is. Because I still got, to this day, I got fucking people like, well, you know, I've been putting money in the bank, but I put in like 9,000. It's like, well, why even do all of that? You know, like, that's... You're putting more of a spotlight on yourself by doing that than if you would have just took the 30 grand and just deposited the whole thing in one shot. Yeah. Because that's considered structuring. Because the way the bank looks at it is like, oh, you're doing it on purpose to try to avoid the $10,000 reporting form that has to be done. So now they have to report you to a different department, which is like financial crimes or suspicious. It's called. I forget, I'm drawing a blank on the fucking name of that department, but it's basically like where they send the report saying, hey, this guy's doing some weird shit, you know, it might be some shady shit going on. And then, like, you know, a month later, you get a letter from the bank like, oh, unfortunately, we're gonna terminate relationship, so now they close your bank account for your business. Because, you know, you've been misinformed your whole life, you know?
Yeah. That's, you know, like, obviously, like, all the different money transfer and stuff, like PayPal and Cash App and Venmo and all this, it's, I mean, for a lot of us, that's become, like, a way we take in payments on things.
Same
you know?
for me.
And
Venmo, Zelle.
Yeah, the Zelle stuff it was great, but man, in like like PayPal was the shit. For me, having a business account, I never had issues with like taking money in, right? I've had people have like horror stories of them not having a business account, but then running high numbers of shit through there, whether they were raffling or you know, selling a lot of stuff, but trying to do it all friends and family all the time. But it used to be so fucking like chill. Like, okay, well, I took this payment for a paint job in, you know, I'm transferring $7,000 over. They're only gonna charge me like certain percentage up to $15. That was it to transfer to my bank account. And now it's like a percentage indefinitely.
Yeah, it's expensive. I mean, if I told you how much I spent on PayPal fees last year, we'll leave it at this. Like, I could have went and bought, you know, like a 2014, 15 Dyna with that kind of money, cash.
Yeah.
It's crazy, bro.
It's a lot, man.
Yeah.
And being a business now, there's no way around like those fees, you know, on there.
Yeah, and then, you know, I get people calling me all the time. They're like, "Hey, I'm about to do this raffle. What's the best way to do it so that I don't have to, like, you know, pay taxes or whatever?" And they're always trying to find a loophole or a workaround or whatever. And it's just like, look, man, like, at the end of the day, you can do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
Right? And hide money however the fuck you want. But if you ever get audited, that's when they're gonna look up your butthole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I had an audit recently, and, you know, I had done some taxes, and then they fucking found all kinds of shit. She sent me a report. I was like, God damn! Like, I didn't even know they had that kind of access, to be honest.
Yeah.
I got a little scared, to be honest. I was just like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Like, she sent me some report, and she's like, you know, I need this, and this. And I was just like, looking at my records for that client. I was like, shit, I don't have like not even a third of what this guy sent me, you know? So that was
so the client gave you not everything.
Right.
Trying to hide things on one end.
I wouldn't say they were trying to hide, you know, but it's just, you know, it's a learning curve for a lot of people. But it was definitely eye-opening to see how much knowledge she had of money that got moved around, and the, you know, number of bank accounts that she pulled up versus what I had got for that year. So it was just like the scale was tipped hard, you know. So it was pretty interesting it was pretty fucking eye-opening to see that shit. And she sent me this other report that showed like all the deposits and withdrawals that he made, even like over $2,000, $5,000, $4,000. So it wasn't the 10 grand limit. It was it was crazy, man. I was like, what the fuck? It was crazy. It was a little scary.
Yeah.
It was a little scary. I was just like, damn. So I just got to work and, you know, figured it all out.
Yeah, that's cool. That's kind of what was, you know, I always felt like if, you know, by not having done the taxes for a couple of years and kind of like really wanting to get after it, but I was always scared there's going to be a phone call one day where they're just like, you know, Wesley Snipes, basically. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
he was on a whole nother level, though. He was like trying not to pay taxes because he was a sovereign citizen or whatever the hell he was trying to claim or something like that. Yeah, but that's why when we spoke, I was like, hey, just hold up. Let me, you know, call the IRS, because I have a direct line with the IRS practitioner hotline. So my hold times are probably sometimes 15 minutes, 20 minutes versus, you know, the average person calls and it's like 2 hours. I do wait on hold sometimes 2-3 hours myself, but it's just, you know, depending on the time of the year. But that's when we spoke. I was like, you know what, let me call the IRS, pull the records, see what we're looking at, and then kind of go from there and figure it out, you know? That's really kind of the way to go when you got like missing returns that far back. Just makes it easier to kind of get a picture and get a scope of what needs to get done and what's being reported and to the IRS, and kind of somewhere to start, you know?
Yeah.
And then it takes alleviates a lot of stress, like, you know, of someone just saying, okay, this is kind of what it looks like. It's not all that bad. I just had a client that called me and she was like, oh, I haven't filed. And I think she does. I want to say she's a tattoo artist. We haven't even got that far yet. But it was more just like, just give me your basic info, you know, first name, last name, address, social, you know, sign this form, you know, gives me a power of attorney. I call the IRS, pull all her records. And, you know, she'd been stressing about it or whatever, but it turns out it's not even that bad. She's got a couple years, like later years, like recent years, like 21, 22 or whatever. And it's looked like she's actually getting some money back, you know. Mm-hmm. But it was just that putting it off that had, like, it just dwells on people to the point where they just think they owe for every year, you know.
Yeah.
And it turned out like she might be getting a little money's coming her way.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
You know.
That's the kind of good thing about, like I said, why I was holding off. I said it earlier, but I was holding off on. I had a shitty CPA that didn't care, right? Didn't do a lot of things, put me in some weird, uncomfortable spots, and then that burned me. That burned my tongue towards like being eager to go find somebody new.
Yeah.
Until it kind of naturally fell into place. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's hard too because you walk into an office and, you know, it's like a suit and tie guy and they know nothing about your business or your industry and stuff. So it's hard to explain to them sometimes, or it's hard for them to grasp the concept of what you do for a living. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like I've talked to a bunch of tax attorneys. I do work for some tax, like I have a couple tax attorneys from back east, and when the shit hits the fan with them and they're really stuck in a bind, like they call me and they're like, hey, I need some help with this shit. Like just charge me whatever, because they know I'm like, you know, Mr. Fix It or whatever. Like there's all, like that's the way my brain works too, man. I know there's always some sort of a solution. There's gotta be. I don't take no for an answer, you know?
Yeah.
I get a hold of IRS rep. No, I can't order those. Like, I think I called a couple times to order records for you, and the lady was like, no, I can't order your account transcripts that far back. I can only go back 3 years. Oh, okay, thank you. Have a good day. Talk to you later. Like the next week I called again, got a different rep, someone that's a little more seasoned veteran or something that's been working there quite some time. We got to talking, and she happened to be cool or whatever. And I was like, hey, I'm really looking to look past these 4-year mark. I'm trying to see what my client needs to get done. I'm trying to get him caught up on, you know, getting some taxes done, etc. And she was like, oh yeah, let me just go into the grandfather system and see if I can pull it from there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like having that type of mentality always takes you a lot further than, you know, someone that's just like, all right, thank you. Like, oh, hey, you know what? I can't do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's good. I mean, that's kind of the things that, like, you know, I've always felt like, and I'm sure this will put all you guys out of business, but I was like, how come everything is so easy? It's so easy to pay my credit card bill, my phone bill. Everything's automated, right?
Yeah.
I always wonder why would you even go to the IRS website and it looks like you're fucking on like C++, like you're, it's not even.
It's like an old archaic website. They were just talking about that at the conference because it's funny because that conference, one of the main reasons I go to that tax conference in Vegas for a week straight is because the person who runs the IRS, he shows up. So he shows up, he talks to everybody. It's like, this is what we're looking to change. This is the direction we're moving in. So we just got a new guy. I forget his name. He just started with the IRS last year, I believe, because last year was the last year for Charles Redding, which was the old IRS dude, the main dude, the director or whatever they call him. That dude was cool as fuck. Fucking, that guy was cool. I like that dude. His wife was a tax preparer, so he got shit every time he went home. You know, because she dealt with the shit that we dealt with, you know.
Yeah.
So the problems that we dealt with as tax preparers, she dealt with as well. So he used to go up there and talk about it all the time. He's like, man, I already know what you're going to ask me for, you know. He'd come up on the mic, like, I already know what you guys are going to ask me for. Here's a list. He'd put it up on the fucking big screen. Everybody started clapping like, yeah, that's what we need fixed.
Yeah.
Because his wife would just get on his ass. And this new guy's pretty good, though, man. You know, I hope to see some pretty good changes within the IRS. He's trying to bring the IRS up to speed with technology, like what you were talking about. Make things more accessible and easier, and bring them to the 21st century.
I don't feel like any like actual adult doesn't want to pay taxes. Like, I mean, let's say this: nobody wants to pay taxes, but anybody running a business, you know, they want it to be legal, legit. They want to be a real business. And that's the hard thing to say. Like, everybody's like, oh, I'm a fucking business, but they don't have tax returns. They don't have taxes paid in. They're just they're making money, but it's not really their money, you know, that shit. But and that's why I've always felt like if it was just a little bit, they already have all the information. Like that, remember that meme that was going around a lot? Like, hey, how you pay us how much you think you owe. We know how much you owe, but
but tell us.
But tell us.
Make sure so we can make sure it's correct.
Yeah, to make sure it's correct. And if you lie, you're going to jail.
Well, well, that's the
you know.
There's a lot of, and just to put this out there, everybody listen up, man. I don't know what TikTok videos y'all been, you know, listening to, but you know, the IRS doesn't have access to your bank account. Like they can see what bank accounts you have, but they can't really look into, like, go in and access your bank account and look at your activity. That doesn't exist. You know, I know I kind of mentioned something similar when about that
lady,
that audit shit that I was talking about, but that's different. That's because the bank's reporting transactions to them. So that's the reason they knew as much as they did, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, they can't just go in there and look into your debit card and be like, oh, I see you spent, you know, 10 grand Chick-fil-A or whatever. Yeah, they don't have that kind of access. The only time they have that kind of access is if you give it to them. And that's when it comes down to being audited, like that's basically what they do is they'll ask you for, that's the first place they're going to hit is your bank account. They'd be like, give us the 12 months bank statements for that bank account. We want to see if your numbers are jiving. Because if you put on tax return your business made 80 grand and your bank statements add up $120,000 in deposits, well, there's a discrepancy there, and they need to figure out why you only put 80 when you're showing money that came in was 120. So that's why it's important to always do your bookkeeping based off your tax returns for that year, so that you can get extremely close to what is being represented.
Yeah.
So the day comes something should happen where you did get audited. Well, they're going to ask you for your bank statements. You're going to hand them to them. They're going to look at them, look at your bank statements, look at your tax return, and be like, okay, well, they're not too far off from what we think there's an error, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely going to put you in a position where things are going to go a lot smoother if you do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You know, because at that point, they're only going to look at other sources, right? Like, oh, did he like not deposit all the money that came into PayPal? Because PayPal is a holding company. That means they hold money for you as well. You know, Venmo, same thing. You can have money sit there. You know, Zelle, it just goes straight to your account.
Yeah.
And that's why I always try to tell clients, like, as soon as you get money in your Venmo, as soon as you get money in your PayPal, just transfer that shit into your bank account ASAP, you know? And that way your bank account's going to have a real life picture of, you know, what went through or what came in as income, business income.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if you do your bookkeeping based off your bank statements for your business bank account and it shows 120 grand came in, but then you held another 40 in PayPal and another 30 grand and that's just sitting in your Venmo that's not reflecting, well, now you're shorting your tax return by, you know, whatever that total is, 50 grand or whatever.
Yeah.
So now you're short on your tax return 50 grand. So if you got audited for that year, and they want all that shit, they're gonna be like, well, wait a minute, hold up, you know, there's 50 grand that they didn't account for. You're like, okay, so now you gotta go in there and add 50 grand to the tax return that's already done. So now, if you want to,
put you in a different tax bracket.
Yeah, that, and you know, if you want to add more deductions, they're gonna be like, well, where do these more deductions come from?
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? So now you're opening up yourself up. So point of the story is just to try to keep your tax return relevant. Under-reporting in taxes is a crime. Over-reporting in taxes is a crime. Believe it or not, there's people that have over-reported income. They only made 100K, but they put that they made 200K. It sounds crazy and stupid, but at the end of the day, it makes sense for someone who's looking to, you know, like real estate agents always get popped for that kind of shit. You know, they say, oh, my real estate business made 200 grand. In reality, they only made 100. So they're over-reporting their income because they want to get approved to buy more real estate. You know, because if they own 4 houses and, you know, those 4 houses, you know, have X amount of payments. So now a majority of that could possibly be eating at their income. So now they want to report more money so they can buy more houses and keep the business going.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So there's people been audited both ways.
Yeah, like I said,
Shit's crazy.
I hope, I hope that the process that we're starting with mine, it just kind of flows and, levels out, and it's something, I at this point right now, my intention in January was to shut my shop down.
Yeah, you're telling me about that.
And I decided to keep it open longer, probably till the end of the year, if not into the next year, and start opening up and taking more paint jobs in, because I've been kind of really regulating how many I do, because I've been trying to focus on podcasting more. Because the podcast, the income that comes through from this is something that comes through. That's what all those 1099s are.
Yeah.
And if you just put those aside, that's a nice, it's enough money to like, hey, this is my income. I'm living off this. Yeah. This is my career, right? It's not enough to cover my livelihood, but it's enough to like look legit or be legit on paper with an income. And then, hey, you want a custom helmet? It's cash only, buddy.
Yeah.
Bam. Now I'm doing what I probably should be doing this if the IRS ever listens to this. But it's like I'm just trying.
It's cash only that gets reported on a tax return.
Yeah. I'll definitely put it on a tax return. Wink, wink. But yeah, that's all it is. I'm just trying to find a way to kind of supplement some extra money, but not to the point where it's like a whole other. Yeah. Like I don't want $100,000 of paint work, which, trust me, that's 10 baggers. It's $100,000.
Yeah.
For 10 nice paint jobs is $100,000.
There's a lot of real estate to cover on a bagger.
Yeah. So I mean, trust me, that when I first got into the paint, I dreamed of one day when I could get $10,000 to paint something, right? Yeah. It just sucks that the economy, got, like, so back when I first got into painting bikes, right? In the chopper days in 2004, these guys were paying $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 to paint 3 pieces of metal.
Dang.
Right? No, not a lot of material consumption. Materials didn't cost a fraction of what they cost now. Stupid money. That's why the industry had so much money back then. You had people buying 18-wheelers and fucking having these huge booths. That's why, like, it's unheard of to go to Sturgis now, because everything costs $13,000 to get a booth there.
Sheesh. Because
they used to make that kind of money, but now we don't really make that kind of money anymore.
Yeah, times have changed.
Now I'm struggling to get $10,000 for 27 pieces, and this dude, rightfully so, is spending a lot of money on a paint job and but he thinks that he's paying for the AMG S-Class, whatever the hell he's getting, but he's really just, because of the economy, he's still getting an E-Class. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's nice. It's going to be dope, but it's not the top.
Yeah.
And so the top shit, I mean, I got homies that people know, I'm not going to put their name out there, that have, there are baggers on the street right now that have cost $30,000 to paint.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up around, hot rods and imports, and, you start going to, like, the import shows and start seeing, like, 4, 5, 6 stage paint jobs and shit, and trust me, one of my dad's first jobs was working at some hydraulic equipment company out in Compton, and behind that shop was Homeboy's Hydraulics, which really big in the lowrider scene. So I've seen since a kid, I've been seeing my fair share of expensive ass paint jobs, and you can tell the difference.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about motorcycles, but the car industry.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Bro, when I first started, I used to hustle. Like, I would go airbrush, like, cars, like lowriders and shit. I would go to these shops, and they were doing candy paint color changes on, when the Dodge came out with the new, the Charger, when they kind of brought that back on the market.
Yeah.
They'd paint those things candy red for $4,000. Pretty fucking decent.
Yeah.
But then, then that was like 10, 12 years ago. And then now that same thing, it's like $14,000 to do it. And that's still kind of a basic fucking thing. But then you go into the higher class, like people that are going through and, not quite Riddler car kind of like quality, but, this is going to be a nice car. It's going to go to SEMA.
Yeah.
They'll have $10,000 plus in the paint, to get a couple gallons of a certain type of color from PPG. I remember I did a SEMA lowrider once, and it was this custom color from PPG. It was a green color, super beautiful. Painted a 59 Impala, right? It's going to be in the Dub booth there.
Yeah.
And
big time right there.
Back in outside, those days. Yeah. That paint, just that it was a pearl that went on top of a color. The color and the pearl for 2 gallons of each because it was a whole Impala, inside out, belly, frame,
Wow.
everything, was $10,000.
Yeah.
That was in 2011.
It's just the paint.
Just the paint. Not
Just
the
the
clear,
paint, everybody.
not the clear coat, not the sandpaper, the thinner, the electricity, the water. Like there's 7 different grits of sandpaper you got to buy. Each one of them is like a package of 50. So they kind of do work on more than just one project, but it's hard to figure out where it stops. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's so many. There's literally probably between 50 and 60 individual products that you need to paint something.
What's your take or opinion on the factory paint jobs these days coming out of Harley? I've heard just because I've heard different. Like I'm not an expert on paint. I do know the difference between a extremely nice paint job and etc.
Yeah, you know quality.
Yeah. But I mean, what's your take on it? Just,
I think that like it's. I know a lot of the guys that do the custom paint at the Harley, like the gunslinger guys that do all the.
I got the Fast Johnny tint set on my ST right now.
I think it's, in all reality, I think it's a good opportunity for people that don't have eyes for custom paint to get something a little unique.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right now, it doesn't feel as unique because they're all new.
Yeah. And
So you're seeing
now.
El Diablos and Whiskey Neats and the Tobacco Fade and then the Fast Johnnies. You're seeing them a lot because they're new bikes.
Yeah.
Within the last 2 years of being out, right? But just you scroll down the path like another couple of years, you'll see less of those on the road.
Yeah.
And then you'll start to see it'll feel more unique to have those then, right? I think that it's a good option to offer, but I also like the fact that their factory bikes don't come with pinstripes on them anymore. They're just emblems you can peel off, so you can sometimes you can just scuff that down a little bit and add some graphics to an existing color, which is cheaper in a sense of doing a whole all-out paint job.
Yeah.
But, because before they would put logos under the clear, so you have to sand that off. So it means you have to buy paint, period.
Yeah.
All the custom paint jobs that come out, they don't quite do as much as they used to back in the day. They used to have a catalog with like 20 different custom paint sets for different models, right?
Yeah, the FXRs are big for that.
Yeah. But, the custom paint world is not going to go down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like it's going to, something happened, the bubble popped, and now custom paint is cheaper now. It goes up and it never goes back down. There's too many factors that have to go in that would bring the price down, right? Insurance would have to go down. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And materials are going to have to go down. Every year there's a 5 to 10% increase on every one of those 60 products I told you need. So it was funny. You used to be able to buy a quart of, let's just say, a House of Color Tangelo Pearl, very popular color, a beautiful color. It's been out forever, right? A quart of that used to cost, let's just say 10 years ago, like $60. That's now $250.
Wow.
You know what I mean? In a 10-year span. That's almost 300% markup. I think that would be that, so it's like it's difficult.
Investing my money in the wrong. I should have been investing my money in paint instead of
but
the stock market.
But think about it, like the paint industry, and that's why I'm really stoked about what Schultz is doing, because I think that he's going to shake up the industry with his paint brand.
Nice.
By doing things differently, because the way that they do paint now, the channel they run it through to get to us is why it costs so much. It's the same reason why there's the argument of like, well, a lot of manufacturers want to get rid of dealerships. That way they can be direct to consumer. Therefore, their prices of their vehicles are less, because they don't have all these other things that have to make money on the process.
Yeah.
But then there's legislation that keeps those things in, everybody wants to do what Tesla's doing, right?
Yeah.
They want a store in the mall that you go and touch a screen and order your car.
I'm surprised that even happened with Tesla. That's crazy.
That electric car shit, you know what I mean? It just kind of it's a wrench in the mix of how things work. And I think that it's going to make some waves that we'll see some changes coming in the industries moving forward. But that's also what I think is going to happen when Schultz brings this Rogue custom finishes to the market. You know what I mean? The products, I've used them, they're quality products. If the price structure and the way that you can get your hands on this paint is on par with what they talked about, it's going to be a no-brainer for custom painters to go that direction.
Nice.
You know what I mean? Which, if you're a place like PPG, yeah, you need, 100,000 body shops across the country to buy your products. That's how you know, and they make such high quantities of it that it can justify.
Yeah.
But if you're smaller quantities, you don't have to sell as much, and your price points can still be good because you're not, you know what I mean?
It's crazy how PPG locks down auto body shops to them because they got the machine, the computer, you know, and then they're like, oh, we're gonna finance it to you, and etc.
You know what they used to do is like a paint, like a jobber, right? Your English color or finish master, whatever it is out here. They would come in and they'd either say, hey, you know what? We'll put a paint booth in your shop. We'll give it to you.
Yeah.
They're giving you the discount that you would make by buying exclusive paint for them.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, your shop, you're probably gonna. I've worked in body shops where they would run $50,000 a month in materials, right? So that's kind of what auto body is running.
Because they're gonna make their money regardless. The paint. That's why they lock them in.
Yeah, so they make it to where you only buy from them, so they'll give you the booth. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like I met one of the homies that go to Sturgis, rich dudes, awesome guys though. One of the guys sells, is it the jets, like private jets?
Oh, okay.
Bombard. It's owned by Polaris, but it's a
Bombardier or whatever.
Yeah, something like that. Well, he was talking about he was selling a jet to Elon Musk, right?
Oh, shit.
The profit on this jet, if he makes the sale, is somewhere in the, like for the company, not necessarily in his pocket, somewhere in the 30 million, or not 30 million, a couple million, like $3 million is I think what it was, $3 or $4 million. So in order to get the sale, he's looking like, you know what? If you buy this jet, we're going to throw in 3 Can-Am Spyders, a couple Polaris, you know, like $600,000-$700,000 worth of other products that Polaris sells. You want an Indian Challenger? Here.
Yeah.
They give it to you because you're buying the jet. It's eating their profit.
Yeah.
But they're still making $2 million.
Yeah. At the end of the day, do you want $2 million profit or do you want zero?
Zero, exactly. So the same thing happens in the paint industry. We're like, hey, we're going to go ahead and, you know, put that mixing system in there. We're going to put the booth in here. And sometimes once they've already done that and you've ran that contract, they'll come in and here's $26,000 to stay with us.
Yeah. I just had a crazy shit happen to one of my clients who owns a paint shop, an auto body shop, where the freaking guy that was selling the paint system, it's like the one that mixes it and type in has a computer, you can type in the color and matches it, all that shit. Yeah, that guy was doing some shady shit and he ended up getting arrested, like, cause the thing was, here's the paint booth, here's the mixing system, here's everything, and you know it's a $100,000 value. We just need you to pay for it, but we're gonna give you a rebate of 80 grand. So technically, you only paid 20 grand for it. Well, this guy was sending those rebates to himself, the sales rep for that company. Yeah, dude, it's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fraud everywhere, bro.
Yeah, that's
a lot of money. But that guy, yeah, he's getting investigated by the FBI. And now all those shops are like, that guy and a couple other shops are being investigated, and they're like, well, we didn't do anything wrong, you know. We thought we just took his word for it. We thought he was the rep.
Yeah.
Well, he was the rep, but we thought he was on the level.
Everything was legitimate. Yeah. So how does it work with people like wanting to get with you as far as like becoming a client of yours, like?
So the way it works for me, and I've kind of been this way for a while, like I'm not technically open to the public.
Yeah.
I'm a private company, you know, like I really only take on clients that are referred to me from existing clients. I mean, if someone wants to call in, if someone wants to email me or send me a DM on Instagram, then, you know, I'll entertain to see if they're a fit for my business.
Yeah, you're not really trying to do like personal taxes.
Nah. I mean, you know, I do personal taxes for existing clients.
Yeah.
So if they do their corporate taxes or their LLC taxes with me, then I do them because they go hand in hand, right?
Yeah,
and it's always better to do both to make sure, you know, everything's being done correctly. But I just recently got help. My daughter started working with me, and my godson started working with me. So right now, I'm just kind of in a position where I'm trying to figure out what their roles are going to be, so that I can kind of look into seeing which road I'm going to take with my business. But what it looks like is I'm going to start focusing more on opening up LLCs, corporations, just because I've been doing a lot of that lately, and I really like what I have to offer versus, you know, what's out there. You know, so when I open an LLC for someone and they have questions, you know, and they call, I pick up the phone. It's not where, oh, I have a question. You know, they're at the bank trying to open up their business bank account, and the, you know, the bank's like, hey, we need this and this, and they're like, oh, well, yeah, I don't have that. Let me send an email to LegalZoom to see if they can get that. And now you're 3 days away from getting this sorted out, and you still don't have a business bank account. So the level of service that I offer is like, you know, client opens up an LLC, I get everything done, I send them an email with everything, they go to the bank's like, hey, you know, because of how it's set up, we might need an operating agreement. Okay, cool. Type it up, send it over, they got it within a minute and a half, you know, because I got maybe a template that'll work with, you know, his type of business or whatever. So that I'm really gonna probably start focusing my business a little bit more the rest of this year on just opening up LLCs and corporations, and we do all 50 states. You know, we do maintenance as well, so we make sure we keep your corporation active by filing, you know, any annual filings that need to be done, and so on. And then based on, you know, the relationship there and the conversations that are had, you know, at that point, if we see that that business is a fit for what we do, and then we'll offer some tax services if they're interested at that point. But we do, we whenever we do open, we charge a little more than your traditional company when it comes to that type of service, like opening up LLCs. But, you know, we do offer support.
Yeah.
So, you know, the day comes that they need to go get their taxes done and they're going to their tax person, you know, I'm definitely a phone call away. Like, oh, hey, you know, this is, he got an LLC, this is how he's gonna file, da 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 da, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So that's kind of what I've been thinking. I'm gonna start moving my business. Still gonna do some taxes, probably just keep on a lot of my existing clientele, but definitely filtering through you know, clients, new clients and stuff. So just want to make sure I'm a fit for them, they're a fit for me.
Yeah, that's,
you know?
any business should be that way.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
for sure. You know, and that's the beauty of what I do is, not saying that some people are, you know, automatically not going to be a fit, but it's, you know, definitely like to know who I'm doing business with. I just had a crazy ass scenario the other day, and that shit kind of like fucked me up a little bit in the head. So I really gotta try to like figure out who I'm working with and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty intense situation.
It's got to be like being a lawyer, you know, like you can only work with the information they give you.
Yeah.
You're going off of how much they're, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you go, you're trusting what they put on the table.
Yeah.
You're going there more or less trying to fight for getting all this stuff done, and then the IRS is like you said earlier, hey, what about all this?
Yeah.
And you're like, yo, why didn't you give me all this other shit?
Yeah,
You know what I'm
it's
saying?
the more you hold out from your tax guy, the worse. So make sure you're and your tax guy are on the same page, and you're explaining to them, you know, hey, I got this other account that I might have used 3 or 4 times to do some business because my Zelle was down or my Venmo was not working, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So just on the level, being on the level is key. You know, people think they're smart and they're gonna try to, you know, hide this or hide that and, you know, whatever else, but, you know, the shit.
The only thing you can hide is cash.
Yeah. Once the shit hits the fan, you know, it's just.
But even cash, like, okay, well, now you got 50 grand cash saved up. You can't really buy anything with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can go buy some like used cars and shit.
I was just in Vegas, dude. I was there for a week and I couldn't, like a couple places, oh, we don't take cash. It's like, what the fuck is Vegas?
Yeah.
Like, no, we don't take cash. I'm like, damn.
Yeah. So there's all those kind of aspects and stuff, but. Well, cool, man. We're almost at 2 hours on this thing.
Oh shit.
Yeah. It goes
I was
fast.
worried. You know, we started and I was like, man, I don't know if I have enough material to do an hour.
I think that this was good to do because it is informative for the type of people who are either looking to go into business for themselves.
Yeah.
This is the kind of shit I wish I would have knew going into business.
Yeah.
Right. People that are in business that are starting to feel like, you know, the pressure that I've been dealing with. Or to the point of like what we said earlier, like finding someone who is a part of the industry that you are in to be the best, you know, help to your business because they're in that.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's kind of like my focus is I try to, you know, do as much as I can so that, you know, my clients could, you know, do what they're good at, right? If they're good at building motors, then I try to like do as much as possible and keep my hands on top on as much as possible so that they're able to like do that without having to be worried about fuck, you know, like, do I need to do this? I need to do that, and then taxes and etc. So I try to stay on top of my clients, but it's hard, man, because I'm getting bigger and then it's just me right now. But now that I got a little help that came in the last 5 or 6 months, my daughter came on board and my godson, so it's
helping.
Yeah, it's gonna change. Things are changing a little bit, so I really gotta, like, you know, just sit back and figure out their roles and then kind of like go from there, because I don't want to rush into something and start taking on a bunch of more work and then, you know what I mean?
Be
like,
overwhelmed, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm already a little overwhelmed, so I want to really bring them on and maybe not take on that much more work till next year when I'm like got them up and running. I know I can count on them and they're gonna do work just as good as I would do the work, right? Yeah. Like that's my main concern is like, you know, it's just get them on board, and you know, I want to get them to where their mindset is kind of like my mindset, you know, like, yeah, because you know, quality.
Yeah, definitely. Well, cool, man. I really appreciate it, and I'll put all your links to, you know, Instagram and stuff.
Well, I don't have a website. I don't have. I just got an Instagram.
Yeah.
But if anybody wants just like a consultation or something, you know, I do consultations over the phone, you know, charge a couple bucks for them, you know, like do $100 for a consultation if you just want a full breakdown of what you should be doing or which route you should take, if you should even open an LLC, you know, that kind of stuff, just to kind of lay the foundation for you to be a little more knowledgeable going into what you think you might want to do. Yeah. I mean, I could always do those all day long, you know. We'll definitely set up appointments. Shoot me a DM. You can put my email out there too. If somebody wants to shoot me an email and they're interested in talking.
Yeah, I'll put it all in the description, so wherever they're listening to this, it'll be right there at the bottom. Instagram, email, you know, how to kind of find you, get a hold of you, shit like that.
Taxman 01.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Jace, appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
I want to thank Manny for hanging out, actually taking me to one of the best, beeriest spots I've ever had in my life, so thank you, sir, on that. But on another note, I want to thank him for helping me out with my problems that I'm dealing with, and also giving us all this information about what it's like, what to do with these kind of parts of business that are not the glamour side of being a brand, especially in the motorcycle industry. As you guys already know, check them down below, man. Sponsors help keep these podcasts rolling and going, along with our Patreon. There's links down for everything below. Check it out. Supporting our Patreon is a good way to become a part of our group chats where we communicate and talk about different things, from photography to custom bike stuff to just everyday general conversations. And also, you'll get access to our Garage Talk podcast, which we are geeking back on since I'm home now. So anyway, I do appreciate everything you guys do. Thanks for listening. I want to thank Manny once again. And yeah, we'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace.